In a quaint and picturesque riverside town, where the gentle flow of the crystal clear river kissed the edges of vibrant green meadows and colorful wildflowers swayed in the soft breeze, lived a young girl named Aisha, whose world was slowly being overshadowed by a heavy cloud of worry and despair. Her home was a small but cozy cottage, perched on the outskirts of this serene town, surrounded by towering ancient trees whose leaves whispered soothing lullabies whenever the wind passed through. Though the town was known for its breathtaking sunsets that painted the sky with hues of pink and gold, and its friendly neighbors, who greeted each other with warm smiles, Aisha's life was marked by a growing urgency and sadness that threatened to consume her with every passing day. Her beloved mother's health worsened, the illness that had silently crept into their lives, stealing not only her vitality, but the very light that once brightened their humble abode. Aisha's mother, a woman of gentle strength and endless kindness, who had nurtured her daughter with love and taught her to find beauty in life's simplest moments, was now frail and pale, her breath shallow and painful. The doctors in the nearby town were sympathetic, but limited in their ability to help, constrained by the lack of resources and the high costs of treatments that Aisha could never afford despite the picturesque setting. Aya's reality was harsh and urgent each dawn. She rose early to tend the small garden beside their home, coaxing vegetables and herbs from the fertile soil, praying for a miracle as she carefully prepared meals and helped her mother bathe and dress. The mornings were filled with quiet determination and hope, but the evenings brought loneliness and fear as she sat beside her mother's bed, holding her trembling hand and wishing she could take away her pain to support them. Aisha worked tirelessly at the local market, sewing delicate embroidery onto scarves and tablecloths that she sold to tourists and townsfolk alike. The work was painstaking and the earnings meager, but every penny was precious, set aside for her mother's medicines and treatments. Yet as the medical bills mounted, the money was never enough, and the shadows of worry deepened in Aisha's heart. The town's beauty offered no shield from the cruel reality of illness and poverty, though neighbors were kind. Their own struggles prevented them from offering much help, and distant relatives had long since stopped responding to her letters and pleas. Aisha felt the crushing weight of responsibility and the painful isolation of fighting this battle alone. Her father had passed away when she was very young, leaving behind only memories and a legacy of resilience that her mother had passed on to her. But now that resilience was being tested like never before. One late afternoon, as the sky glowed with soft hues of orange and purple and the river shimmered under the setting sun, Aisha found herself sitting on the wooden dock, her feet dangling just above the cool water. The gentle ripples reflected the twilight sky, creating a mirror of fleeting hope and fragile dreams. Clutching a folded letter in her hands, her fingers trembled with a mixture of fear and determination. The letter was addressed to Malik Shah, the powerful and enigmatic CEO of a vast business empire in the distant city, a man known far and wide for his cold and ruthless nature. The stories she had heard about Malik Shah were both terrifying and fascinating. Tales of his unyielding authority and a heart said to be as cold as the marble floors of his towering office building. Yet for all his fearsome reputation, he was her only hope, the one person who had the means to save her mother's life. After nights of agonizing thought, Aisha had made a desperate decision to offer herself as his contract wife in exchange for the funds required to cover her mother's expensive treatment. The plan filled her with shame and terror, but love and desperation propelled her forward. She packed a small bag, leaving behind the riverside town she cherished, and embarked on a journey toward the sprawling city, her heart pounding with a turbulent mix of hope and dread. The journey was long and daunting, taking her through lush countryside that slowly gave way to the sprawling urban landscape of steel and glass. Towering skyscrapers glittering in the midday sun, the city was a stark contrast to her peaceful hometown, full of noise, crowds, and an impersonal rush that made her feel small and lost. Yet she held tightly to her resolve, focusing on the promise she had made to her mother and the fragile hope that this encounter might change their fate. Upon arriving at the imposing office building where Malik Shah held court, Aisha was overwhelmed by its size and grandeur. The entrance was guarded by sleek security, and the lobby shimmered with polished marble floors and elegant chandeliers that reflected the cold brilliance of wealth and power. With trembling hands, she presented herself to the receptionist. Explaining her desperate plea to see the CEO, she was granted a brief audience, and when Malik Shah entered the room, his presence was as commanding as the stories foretold, tall and impeccably dressed. His sharp eyes scanned her with calculated precision. Aisha felt the weight of his gaze like a physical force, yet she steadied herself and spoke honestly, laying bare her mother's illness, her family's desperation, and her unimaginable proposal to become his contract wife in exchange for the money that could save her mother's life. Malik Shah listened without interruption, his face an unreadable mask as he asked pointed questions that made her feel vulnerable yet compelled her to be truthful. Her voice quivered at times, but her spirit remained resolute. After what felt like an eternity of silence, he finally said he would consider her request and instructed her to return in 1 week. The days that followed were marked by anxious anticipation and sleepless nights. Back in her modest rented room in the city, Isha wrestled with conflicting emotions, her hope rising and falling like the tide of the river she had left behind when she was summoned again. Malik Shah presented the terms coldly and businesslike. Aisha was to enter into a legal contract of marriage for a fixed period, a union with no promises of love or affection, but one filled with formal obligations. The contract was strict and binding, a stark reminder of the transactional nature of their arrangement, yet it offered the lifeline she so desperately needed. With a heavy heart and shaking hands, she signed the document, stepping fully into a new and unfamiliar world, far from the riverside town of her youth. The mansion where Malik Shah resided was a fortress of modern architecture surrounded by immaculately maintained gardens with sculpted hedges and fountains that sparkled under the bright sun inside. The air was cool and filled with the subtle scent of expensive perfumes and polished wood. The halls echoed with silence and the quiet hum of luxury. At first, her relationship with Malik Shah was distant and formal. They existed in parallel worlds within the same space. He was the powerful CEO, and she was the contract wife, fulfilling her role with quiet dignity and endurance. Aisha often found herself reminiscing about the laughter of children playing by the river and the sweet scent of jasmine drifting through her old home. Contrast between her past and present life was a constant ache in her heart, yet beneath the surface of their cold interaction, subtle changes began to take root. Malik Shah, the man rumored to be heartless, started noticing the small things about Aisha, her unwavering strength, the kindness in her eyes, and the light she brought to his otherwise stark and rigid world. He found himself watching her when she thought no one was looking, admiring her quiet courage and the gentle resilience that slowly chipped away at the icy fortress around his heart. Aisha remained unaware of the depth of his attention, believing their connection was nothing more than a necessary business transaction. But the rare moments when his stern gaze softened, or when he showed unexpected concern, planted a seed of hope within her. As the money from the contract ensured, her mother received the best treatment available. Aisha's hope blossomed with her mother's gradual recovery. The cold walls of the mansion that once felt suffocating began to feel less alien and more like a place where she could maybe build a future. Despite her growing feelings, fear and uncertainty lingered. She worried that the fragile peace they shared was built on legal documents and not genuine affection, that the man she had come to respect might never truly care for her beyond the terms of their agreement. Still, her sacrifice was a testament to her love and devotion, an act fueled by courage and desperation. Days turned to weeks, and the contract wife from the beautiful riverside town found herself caught between worlds, one of love and loss, of pain and unexpected warmth. The journey that began with a desperate offer was unfolding into a story neither she nor Malik Shah could have imagined, one where the coldest heart might just thaw and the poorest girl might find a place to belong beneath the cold surface of wealth and power. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Aisha dared to dream beyond survival, daring to believe in the possibility of love that could heal even the deepest wounds. In the days that followed, within the grand walls of Malik Shah's sprawling mansion, surrounded by immaculately trimmed gardens and fountains that sparkled beneath the sun. Aisha's life unfolded in a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. She had entered this world under the weight of a contract born from desperation, yet what grew between them transcended mere legal obligations. Slowly but surely, the cold-hearted CEO who had once seemed so unreachable began to reveal glimpses of a tenderness hidden deep within his guarded soul. Malik Shah was a man shaped by years of struggle and solitude, his business empire built on unyielding discipline and ruthless decisions, but beneath that exterior lay a heart capable of profound care. In affection, he found himself drawn inexplicably to Aisha, not as a contract wife, but as a woman of remarkable strength, grace, and kindness. Her presence softened the harshness of his world, bringing warmth to the cold marble halls of his mansion. Each day he observed her resilience, the quiet dignity with which she carried the burden of her sacrifices, and the gentle light in her eyes that refused to be extinguished even in moments when the demands of their arrangement made her weary. Malik Shah saw a courage that inspired him to question his own emotional defenses, for Aisha's life was a tapestry woven with threads of love, sacrifice, and hope. Though her days were filled with the duties imposed by the contract, she never lost sight of the love that had driven her to this path, the love for her mother whose fragile health depended on the success of this arrangement. Every morning she would rise early, tending to small chores, navigating the unfamiliar luxury of the mansion, while secretly longing for the familiar sights and sounds of her riverside hometown. Yet amidst her longing, she felt the stirrings of something new and unexpected within Malik Shah's calculated world. She found moments of genuine connection and unexpected kindness, small gestures, a cup of tea left on her bedside table when exhaustion overwhelmed her, a brief smile that lit his usually stern face, the rare invitations to share quiet meals, chipped away at the walls of loneliness that had encased them both, guarded their emotions carefully, neither willing to expose vulnerability that could be used against them. But beneath the surface, the currents of affection and understanding grew stronger. The mansion that once echoed with silence now held whispers of shared dreams and unspoken hopes. Their conversations, though often restrained, revealed glimpses of their true selves. Malik Shah spoke cautiously of his past losses and the burdens of power, while Aisha shared stories of her childhood by the river, her mother's laughter, the simple joys she longed to return to. These exchanges wove a fragile tapestry of trust between them. Fragile yet unbreakable through their shared trials, yet fate tested this fragile bond when one evening Aisha received an urgent call from her mother's doctor. News that shattered the cautious optimism they had nurtured. Her mother's condition had taken a sudden turn for the worse. The fragile thread of hope threatened to snap, and panic gripped Aisha's heart. With tears streaming down her face, she rushed to Malik Shah, explaining the gravity of the situation. Without hesitation, he became a pillar of strength. The ruthless CEO sprung into action, arranging for the finest specialists, flying in experts from distant cities and allocating vast resources to ensure her mother received the best possible care. His actions defied the cold reputation he bore, revealing a depth of compassion few had witnessed. The nights that followed were long and filled with anxious waiting, but in those moments of uncertainty, a new bond formed between Aisha and Malik Shah. It was forged in shared worry and fierce determination, a bond that transcended the boundaries of their contract and touched the core of their beings. As her mother's health slowly improved thanks to the relentless efforts of the medical team, Aisha felt a wave of gratitude, not just for the treatment, but for the man who would become her unexpected protector. Her heart swelled with emotions that she struggled to name: gratitude, love, and a growing sense of belonging. Malik Shah, too, was changed. The businessman who had long lived behind a mask of control and detachment found himself embracing feelings he had never dared to acknowledge. His admiration for Aisha blossomed into a fierce protectiveness and a longing to shield her from the world's harshness he cherished. Every smile, every shared glance, every moment that brought them closer. Despite the growing intimacy, both lived with the ever-present fear of the contract's end. They knew that their legal bond was temporary, but the feelings they nurtured were Anything but fleeting, the world outside the mansion's walls remained. Judgmental and unforgiving, and they both feared what might come once the contract expired. The contract that had brought them together was a fragile thread binding to wounded souls, yet it could not contain the depth of their connection. The mansion that once symbolized isolation and power was now a sanctuary of healing, love, and hope. Isha wrestled with doubts and fears, questioning whether she was worthy of love beyond the contract and whether Malik Shah could truly open his heart. She longed for a future where they could be more than a contract wife and a cold CEO, where love was free and unburdened by circumstance. Their story was a testament to the power of sacrifice and resilience, but also to the possibility of redemption and transformation. Through the trials and the quiet moments of tenderness, they found a love that defied expectations and shattered preconceived notions. It was a love born not of convenience, but of courage and vulnerability. Their journey was far from over, but they faced it together, hand in hand, hearts twined by shared pain and newfound hope. The river that flowed through Aissa's hometown became a symbol of their journey, constant and enduring, a reminder that even the coldest currents can nurture life and warmth. In the midst of wealth and shadows of fear, they dared to dream of a future where love conquered all, and where their hearts could finally rest in the embrace of one another. Their story was not just a tale of a contract or sacrifice, but a celebration of the human spirit's capacity to heal, to love, and to believe in the impossible.